When you open your eyes, you realize that you had fallen asleep for a few hours. Groggily, you pull yourself to your feet and pick up Sadie's book, tossing it in the crate across the room as you stretch your neck from side to side and wander restlessly into the kitchen. There was a plate of food on the counter, and you vaguely recalled that Captain Phasma had promised that someone would be by to bring you meals twice a day. It looked like it was just something from the cafeteria, but you couldn't really be bothered to care. Food was food. You had never been picky about it, although that was probably because you still remembered how your father used to trade in spare parts for daily portions of bread when you were younger. But food had been in abundance at your academia, and it was plentiful here too, so you had at least allowed yourself to expect a variety of flavors and textures in your daily meals. At least the plate was still warm as you stuffed yourself with food, chewing lazily with your mouth open, enjoying the quiet. Kylo Ren was going to be gone for long stretches at a time. You could see that now, and so you were going to have to put up with your own company for a while. Not that you minded. Again, you were reminded that B had planned to keep you locked in your room for weeks until you got back to your academia. You had thought that was cruel punishment then, but looking back on it now, it seemed crueler that he claimed to do it for your own protection. Yes, Kylo Ren probably would have been suspicious if they had resurrected the wall in your mind instantly, but maybe if they had... No. You finish off the last bit of food and lift the plate to your lips, licking it clean before you slam it down on the counter. No, you refused to think about this anymore. B was dead. Tara was maybe dead, and the rest of your friends were probably off this base already, either being sent home or sold into slavery. It wouldn't do you well to hold a grudge. What had been done was done. If you remained angry about it, then you would eventually take out your rage on the only person you actually saw, Kylo Ren. And you refused to do that. He may have had his own selfish reasons for keeping you here, but at least he was keeping you safe, and lashing out at him would only result in extremely negative consequences for you. Instead, you decide to channel your frustration in the healthiest way you can, heading back into your room and picking up your staff. It was hardly the same without Ladson here to spar with, but at least you could still keep up your skills and pretend. If you stayed on Kylo's good side and remained on your best behavior, there was at least a chance he would let you go to your self-defense classes again. At least that would give you a change of scenery, and it wasn't as if you had actually learned anything of serious consequence. It didn't matter how much you could defend yourself. You were only one person. Kylo had the Force, and stormtroopers had blasters. You could try to kick them, and they could blow a hole right through your foot. It was a distraction, that's all it really was, but a nice distraction that made you feel a bit better about yourself nonetheless. You were still spinning your staff around and around in your hands when Kylo Ren came back about an hour later. You called out a small noise of greeting as the door opened, but you stayed in the room, turning the staff hand over hand. You had spun it over 200 times without dropping it, and you were going for 1,000. Your wrists were starting to ache, but it wasn't as if you had anything better to do, and the constant counting at least kept your mind occupied. Kylo appears in the door without his usual armor. He seems to wait for you to notice him, and so you reluctantly bring your staff by your side as you focus on him. He's holding something long and wooden in his hands, and that's when you realize that he's holding a true bow staff. You bite your bottom lip and can't suppress a smile, thinking at first that it's a gift for you. What are you doing with that? When I was in your mind earlier, I saw all sorts of things, he says, looking quite pleased with himself. I saw how you spent your days, and I saw how you spent most of your nights. You feel heat rising to your cheeks, and for a moment you're worried that he's jealous of Ladson. This seems to be the case as he puts one foot out in front of him in a lunge, holding the staff across his body. No. You shake your head back and forth quickly. Oh, no. No, he asks, a small smile playing on his lips. Why not? You stare at him, not quite knowing where to begin. For one, he's much bigger than you are. He was taller than you are, and was stronger than you were, and he was probably better trained than you were too. You didn't know how much training he had with a staff, specifically, but he probably had all sorts of weapons training. Even on his worst day, he is probably better than you on your best day. Plus, there's also that pesky little matter of his temper. What if you beat him and he felt emasculated and decided to take out his frustration on you? What if he lost control and... Are you afraid I'm going to hurt you? He asks, tilting his head to one side, and you hesitate before nodding your head slowly, remembering to be honest with him. He leans his staff against one wall before disappearing into the living room, and you stand there, not sure if you should follow him, before he returns with something else in his hand. It's a small black metal staff, shorter than yours when it's contracted, with two small ends sticking up and out to the side to make the ends of a T. Do you know what this is? You shake your head, and he gestures for you to come closer. He holds it out in front of him, holding the staff parallel to his body as he brings it around in front of him. Suddenly you see a flash of red and your feet stop moving. It's his lightsaber, the one C had described. It looks mean. You don't have another word to describe it. It's emitting some sort of low hum, but in addition to that, it's crackling and hissing and spitting like it has a temper of its own. In addition to the central blade, there are also two small crossguards that jut out on each side that makes it look like a giant, glowing red sword. Do you like it? He asks, and you nod your head nervously. You weren't sure if you liked it so much as you were afraid of it. It looked powerful and scary and dangerous. He's telling you about how he made it himself out of a single cracked kyber crystal, and you can't help but notice how proud he sounds, like a little kid showing off something he made all by himself. You had no idea how much work went into making a lightsaber, but you could tell from his tone that it was probably a lot. You could also tell that this was his main weapon. He probably never let it leave his sight, which meant that if you disobeyed him, he could run you through with it at any time. What if you did something, one little thing to make him angry, and he... You look up at him and realize that he's stopped talking. He looks displeased, although you can't tell if it's because he thinks you weren't paying attention to him, or if it was because he was following your thoughts. Whether it was because he was in your head or because he could read the look on your face, it didn't matter. How he knew would not protect you from his next two words. Touch it. Touch it, you repeat. You may not have been paying that close attention to what he had been saying, but C had told you about how he was able to wreck consoles with it, and if it could melt metal, your hand would be gone in seconds. Touch it, he repeats. You stare into his dark eyes, but can only see the red glow of the blade reflected in them. The look on his face is cold. He's serious. But he can't be serious. You want to argue with yourself? He can't be serious. He can't expect me to. Suddenly he holds out his other hand, palm up, and you watch as your hand rises up in front of you. No, Kylo. You pull in a deep, shuddering breath, and you can feel tears prick in your eyes as he pulls your hand closer to the blade. You grab at your wrist with your other hand, trying to pull it away, but it keeps moving, your fingers getting closer. Your heart is thumping in your chest, and you screw your eyes shut, turning your face away, getting ready to experience the most intense pain of your life. Look! His voice is dark, commanding, and suddenly you feel your eyes open as your head snaps around to look. He's doing this, you realize. He wants to force you to watch your own skin melt. Tears are flowing freely from your eyes now, and you hate him so much. You hate him more than you hated B. They were right. He was a monster. He didn't care about you. How could you be stupid enough to think that he cared about anyone? You had insulted his ego, and because of that, he was going to make you burn off your own hand. You want to beg him, beseech him not to do it, but if he's in your head, then he already knows what you want to say. You bring your eyes back to his face again, which is as hardened and as focused as ever. He doesn't care. Just as your fingertips are about to touch the blade, it disappears. The red light is gone, both from the blade and from his eyes, and his hold on you drops. You clutch your hand back to your chest and hold it out in front of you, letting tears stream down your face. You whimper quietly, trying to hold back your tears, afraid that an outburst might only incite him further. He puts down the lightsaber, but you still don't feel relieved as he walks towards you, putting his large hands on either side of your head as he forces you to look at him. He looks serious, but there is at least a small hint of apology in his eyes. How else can I make you understand? He asks firmly. I'm not going to hurt you. I know at times I can be reckless, but I am in control. I'm not going to hurt you again. You blink up at him, trying to understand. Was that what he was trying to do? Show you that he could control himself not to hurt you? It made an impression. You had to give him that, but you weren't quite sure it was the one he had intended. Your head bobs up and down in acceptance as he lowers his head to try to kiss you. You let him, puckering your lips just barely enough to barely kiss him back. He brushes a strand of hair out of your face as he studies your expression, and you do your best to look as unafraid as possible. Pick up your staff. You nod your head curtly as you pick up your staff from where you had dropped it. It's already extended to its full length, and you hold it across your body. I've never had any sort of formal training, you tell him nervously, not quite sure if he knows this already. Then allow me, he says simply. He takes 2 quick strides towards you, raising the staff, and you literally just shut your eyes and cower there, holding your arm in front of your face at an angle to protect yourself. When the force of impact doesn't come, you lower it slowly, cautiously. Sorry, you say softly, averting his eyes. When you finally do look at him, his expression is bemused, waiting for your explanation. It's just that when I was sparring with Ladson, he was kind of weak. I knew he couldn't really hurt me. He bends down and puts his staff on the floor, holding his palms out in front of him. Hit me. You stare at him, eyes wide. It reminded you of when Captain Phasma had told you to hit her back in the gym during your first self-defense class. What was it with the First Order? Why did they want everyone to go around hitting them to prove their strength? I can't hit you, you say softly. Because you're afraid of me? He asks, and you consider this for a moment. No. You shake your head as you look up at him. I know I'm not going to hurt you. I can't hurt you, but I don't know. I have no reason to hit you. He stares at you for a moment, but there's something different in his eyes. It looks like he's just taken on a challenge, a puzzle, and he's trying to figure out how to solve it. Tell me about B. About B, you ask. You had momentarily forgotten that all of your thoughts were at his beck and call. What about him? He betrayed you, Kylo says, circling you as he speaks. He put you up like a lamb for the slaughter. He used you as bait. What if I had choked you to death? Do you think he would have cared, or would he have just seen you as another casualty of his mission? Something stirs in your chest. You don't like it. For a moment, you would do anything to get him to stop talking about this. Was that his plan, to make you angry? You had just decided during dinner that you weren't going to let yourself feel angry. You weren't going to let it take over you. What about Sadie, he asks. That was your friend's name, right? Sadie? Wasn't she like a sister to you? And now I wonder where she is. Halfway across the galaxy, sold into a life of slavery for all I know. And all because you told me her name. She betrayed you, and then you betrayed her, and... Stop talking. The muscle in your arm spasms involuntarily, but he continues to circle you like a vicious animal, waiting to go in for the kill. It doesn't make you angry? He asks. To know the entire reason you were sent here was to be used as bait? What does that say about you? His voice gets lower. B told you himself, didn't he? The only reason you were brought here was as a distraction for me. He knew that I choked you. He watched how you cover up the bruises I left you. He knew I could return at any time and kill you in your sleep, and he didn't lift a finger to try to protect you. You were expendable to him. His voice drops even lower, although you don't know how that's even possible. You weren't brought here to be an interpreter. You were brought here so that I could fuck you and use you in whatever way I wanted. That's the only thing he thought you were good for. Doesn't that bother you? You want to hate him, but you can't, because he's right. B knew about the bruises, and he did nothing to protect you. And he had said as much himself, leaning over C's bleeding body. He had told you that you were just a distraction for Kylo Ren. He knew you would play hard to get, and he knew... Ugh. The whole thing made you sick to your stomach, and you give in to your anger. You pull your fist back and punch him as hard as you can in his shoulder, and you're almost surprised to see him stumble back a little bit, like he's not expecting it. You hesitate for a moment, watching him, but his lip pulls into a triumphant sneer, and suddenly you hate him more than ever. You step forward to punch him again, quickly, but he blocks you with one arm. Still, it doesn't look completely effortless, and you move in closer, sending the punch towards his face. He grabs your wrist. Other fist? He grabs that one in midair too, and as he holds your wrists in front of you, his long fingers squeezing into you almost painfully, it reminds you of the first time you had sparred with Ladson. You throw your body down towards the floor and he releases you as you throw out a kick to your side, planting it squarely into his abdomen as you use your hands to balance. He's not as tough without his armor on, and he stumbles backwards a little bit, his eyebrow cocked in confusion. He hadn't been expecting that. You get back on your feet, arms out in front of you, blocking your torso. Remember what Captain Phasma had said. This was self-defense. You had the upper hand if you were in a defensive position, not an offensive one. He stands up straight and walks closer to you now, watching you with interest. He opens his mouth to speak, but you shake your head. Don't talk. You wanted me to get angry. Well, I'm angry. You want to fight me? Then go ahead. Let's fight. He narrows his eyes at you and throws out a punch, but the motion is far too slow, and you can tell by the way he barely extended his arm that he's holding back. Even still, you don't let him hit you. You push his arm out with your forearm and, holding it with one hand, take the chance to reach in and punch his chest quickly before you pull away. It's only going to piss me off more if you don't even try, you snap. He goes to hit you with his elbow and you let him, making no move to block it. It hurts like hell, but you just close your eyes and shake your head, as if it doesn't make a difference to you. Seriously, if you're not even going to try, I'm not even going to block it. He studies you for a moment, and he makes a move to punch you before he drops down to the floor and uses his hands to support himself as he kicks you, hard. The action has you completely blindsided, and you let yourself fall backwards onto your butt. He holds his hands out to help you, and you take advantage of it, pulling him down onto the floor with you as you roll out of his way. You quickly get onto your knees and straddle him, putting both hands flat on his chest. Impressive kick, but I think I win. Really? You don't know how he does it, but your vision goes black for a minute as you wind up on your back with him on top of you, your hands pinned to either side of your head. I got this, you huff stupidly. He bends down to kiss you, but you pretend to be annoyed, trying to suppress your giggles as you shake your head from side to side so that you can't even get close. Instead, you try to free yourself, pushing your hips up. That has the opposite effect, as you accidentally feel his length through the thin barrier of clothes beneath you. You rake in a deep breath and let him capture your lips between his own this time, although the heels of your feet still pound against his back. He plants a trail of kisses along your neck, holding your arms down by your head while you struggle and buck, trying to shake him off. He nips playfully at your earlobe, and you can feel his breath hot against your ear. Roll your hips. What? No, if you do that, it'll feel good and... Oh, wait. You get it. You roll your hips out to the side, scrunching up your body as you go, and you manage to pull one leg out, using it as leverage to get to your knees. He's still holding your hands out by your sides, but you throw your weight at him, leading with your shoulder, and he reluctantly lets one of your wrists go as you climb to your feet. From there, it's an easy twist to pull your other wrist out of his grasp. You're standing a good few feet away from him now, and you watch him with a smirk playing on your lips as he gets back on his feet. If you want me, you're going to have to do better than that. I was hoping you'd say that, he says as he comes towards you, and suddenly your thoughts dissolve into movements and counter-movements, strikes and blocks, and yes, occasional bursts of pain that you would never admit to. But the worst part was that you liked it. Before, when it was just fooling around with Ladson, it had been just sort of fun play fighting. But this was different. It hurt when he hit you, and it felt like you actually had a stake in this, like you actually had a stake in your own well-being. It was like before you were just a child playing pretend, and this was the real thing. Even though you understood that Kylo had just brought up Bee and Sadie in order to goad you into anger to fight him, it also made you realize something else. Kylo was preparing you, slowly, in his own way, to not let yourself be taken advantage of again. It's why he held out his lightsaber and almost made you touch it. He wanted it to be clear. He could hurt you, easily, but he wasn't going to. Sure, it was harsh and cruel, but it was also honest in a way that you could now appreciate. Bee had always acted like he would protect you if it came down to it, but in the end, his words meant nothing. At least Kylo was clear. He wasn't going to protect you unless you really needed him to. Instead, he was going to force you to protect yourself. Because he knew you could. You throw yourself at him, knocking him onto his back, and your mouth covers his with greedy, sloppy kisses. Your sides ache and sweat is dripping off of your forehead, but you don't care. You need him. You need to feel him. He sits up suddenly as if to flip you over, and you wrap your arms around his neck as you kiss him. He grabs your arms roughly and forces them to your sides as he grabs the hem of his shirt, pulling it up and over his head. Sweat is dripping down his chest, and you run your hands over his muscles, greedily drinking him in as you breathe your words out in a breathless whisper. Oh, fuck. Your eyes meet his again just for a second, and you can see the spark in his eyes. He likes this as much as you do. He likes that you can take a hit, likes that he can be rough with you. You can't deny the rush of exhilaration that goes through you as you think of all the things that he could do to you, that you could do to him. He smirks wickedly at you, and your stomach suddenly lurches. Are you in my head right now? I don't need to be. Suddenly, there is a frantic scrambling of limbs as clothes get pulled off and deposited in every direction. You climb into his lap and push yourself down over him without warning, without preamble, biting into his shoulder as hard as you can. You can hear him grunt in your ear through clenched teeth as he brushes your sweaty hair out of your face, giving him access to your neck. No, you don't. Your left hand comes around to his shoulder and pushes him back, pushing him down onto the floor. You hold his shoulder steady with both hands as you move up and down on top of him, moving agonizingly slowly. You raise your hips and tease him, hovering for a moment before crashing back down on top of him. He lets you do it twice before he sets up again, trying to knock you onto your back, but you won't allow it. Instead, you wrap your arms around his neck and force yourself to sit upright, wrapping your legs around his waist. You kiss him fervently and run your hands through his hair, which is damp and tangled with sweat. Somehow it makes him even hotter as you push yourself against him, thrusting your hips against his in short, desperate bursts. You pull away from him and lean back slightly, allowing him to move deeper inside of you as you put your arms on the floor on either side of you for support. Fuck. Yes, Kylo, fuck. You throw back your head and groan as he pumps into you, filling you, and as you reach your orgasm, you let him sweep you backwards until he's on top of you as he finds his own release, his long fingers digging into your upper arms as he comes. You let him cover his mouth with yours as you drink in his hot, desperate gasps for air. Eventually, he collapses beside you, and you playfully push his chest off of you. He's too hot, too sweaty, and too heavy, but he keeps his arms around you as you breathe out. We missed the bed, you say, teasingly, to break the silence. He just grunts in acknowledgement, and you immediately regret saying anything. But this is good. This is fine, though. He grunts as he gets to his feet and bends down to pick you up. He literally tosses you onto the bed before he throws himself down beside you. You can't help but giggle, but stop as he seals your mouth with his, silencing you with soft, gentle kisses. You breathe out a loud exhale, still delirious and lightheaded, but happy. We should do that more often. He grunts. Which part? Both, you say teasingly, although you didn't need to say all that stuff to get me to hit you. I know, he says quietly, and a crease forms between his brow as he frowns. You twist over and look at him in confusion. When I came in, I could feel your anger. But it wasn't at you, you say quietly. He shakes his head like it doesn't matter. You're going to be alone here for most of the day, he says in that same low voice. You need to know why you're angry so you know how to release it. You consider what he's saying, but it sounds too rational and level-headed to be coming from him. Don't project, you say teasingly. You're just as mad about what they did as I am. They used you too. He growls as he rolls over onto you, planting a kiss to your neck. And I am controlling my anger, he says through gritted teeth. Yeah, you ask? How many consoles have you destroyed lately? Today, he asks. 4. You pause, not sure if he's teasing you or not. It's hard to tell with him, but at least if he was telling the truth, it meant that he was taking out his anger on machinery and not on you. So I'm going to be alone here for a while, you ask? How long is a while? You can't just keep me locked in here forever, just spending my days waiting for you to come back. It's not up to me, he says smoothly, although there's an edge to his voice. I'll make you a deal, you say, propping yourself onto your arms to get a better look at him. I'll talk to you about what makes me angry if you talk about what makes you angry. No, he says flatly. No? You ask, raising an eyebrow. So you prefer for us to vent by hitting each other? Sparring, he corrects you. So we're supposed to just spar and fuck every night, you ask? He seems to consider this. I mean, yes, I'm sure you have to put up with idiots all day, but you can at least talk to people out there. I don't have anyone to talk to here. It wouldn't be so bad if you just let me out a little bit every day. No, he says firmly, and your shoulders drop. Not yet, at any rate. Be patient. Be patient, you muse. You don't want to be patient. I'm tired of people using me without people telling me what they're using me for. Everyone's going to use you if you have something they want, he says as he closes his eyes. Not you, you remind him. You think I'm not using you? He asks, raising an eyebrow. You care about me, you say playfully, but suddenly you're not so sure. You avoid his eyes and roll the other way, facing the wall. You can hear him sigh from behind you as he says your name, but you just shake your head. No, it's fine. I remember what you said. You don't even like me. He hesitates. I saved your life. And I'm so grateful, you murmur. Now instead of being shipped across the galaxy with my friends, I get to be stuck in your room all day waiting for you to come back so you can hit me and fuck me. You hear his breath catch in his throat. You're right, spar and fuck. You're right, my mistake. You'd rather be halfway across the galaxy than be here with me? He asks quietly, and there's something in his tone. Great. Now you've offended him. You roll back over onto your side to face him. That's not fair, you mutter. You know you can read my mind to see how I feel. Just because I can doesn't mean I will, he retorts. But you still have that option, you counter. I don't know how you feel. For all I know, you just want to fight me and fuck me. He glares at you, and you glare right back. You want to know how I feel? He demands. Yes, you say firmly, your voice full of conviction. I like you, he says as fast as possible, getting his words out in a rush. I like you too, you spit back. I care about your safety, he snaps, and I care about yours. You glare at each other for a minute longer before he grabs you, pulling your lips to his. You wrap your arms around his neck, running your hands through his hair as he runs his hands along your back. You kiss him with such intensity that you are completely out of breath by the time he pulls away. Okay, sparring and fucking. I can live with that, you murmur. And you do. For the next few days, you spar until you're both dripping with sweat, and then you fuck. Sometimes it's in the living room, sometimes it's in the kitchen, sometimes it's in the bedroom. Once it was in the bathroom, in the shower, but it was slippery, and neither of you was really eager to try that one again. It was strange. At first you had thought that you wanted to talk to him about what had happened, but when you were both lying together in bed at night, you couldn't think of one thing you wanted to say to him. You had both been used by B, and now he was dead. Sure, it bothered you every now and again, but you released your anger by sparring with Kylo until you were physically too exhausted to be angry. You weren't sure if it was the healthiest approach, but it was at least a good way to kill time until you figured out what exactly you were doing here. What did they want you for anyway? Kylo either didn't know or wouldn't say, but once he had told you that he was at least working on it. You had no idea what that meant, but you trusted him. And it wasn't just because he told you he liked you, or because he cared about your safety. You had guessed that much already. In fact, you weren't quite sure why you had suddenly trusted Kylo. He had saved your life, you could believe that much, and if he was sincere when he told you that he liked you, then that gave him additional motive and explained why he saved the lives of your friends. He had told the First Order that you had spoiled their plot in order to protect you, and he was sparring with you now, honing your skills, still trying to help you protect yourself and vent your anger. The only problem was that you couldn't understand why he was doing it. Sure, he cared about you, and he liked you, but it seemed almost too selfless to be an authentic gesture of affection coming from him. Was Sadie right about you? Were you so determined to think of him as an evil person that you refused to at least consider that he was capable of doing good deeds, especially when it came to you? Either way, you didn't have to think on it much more as the door opened up one morning. You had been lying on the bed, naked, when you heard the door open without a knock. The stormtroopers, you had come to learn, knocked 3 times before they entered Kylo Ren's apartment to give you time to prepare yourself in case you were indecent. But if there was no knock, then it could only be Kylo. Who else would it be? Back so soon? You call teasingly. There's no answer, and so you quickly kick the sheets away from you as you smirk and head into the living room, still undressed. I swear, if you think I'm ready to go again after last night, then... But your voice immediately cuts off as you stare at the person standing in your living room. General Hux. The corner of his mouth pulls up into a sneer. Put some clothes on, he tells you. Your presence has been requested.